Hey Magic the Gathering players, it's Ivy, and I've now built an amazing deck that I wanted to share to you guys. What I've got here is this is my third iteration of the SuperFriends deck, where it looks like I actually know what I'm doing this time. So I've got some really good stuff in here. I will give you a heads up. This is about as good as this deck's gonna get. That is reasonably affordable, or at least can be obtained. Anything past this, you're looking at thousands of dollars for, a mana or land base. So, without further ado, we're going to just jump right into this. This is a 5-color SuperFriends deck. Previous decks I did were with just 4 colors, because I was using this card right here, Atraxa. Atraxa was really a 4-color commander. So, I've now switched to all 5 colors, so I can pretty much have access to anything I need. So why don't we just dive right into this and take a look and assemble the SuperFriends. Alright, so first card we got, this is the Commander. I'm using Sisay, Weatherlight Captain. Sisay, Weatherlight Captain gets +1/+1 for each color among other legendary permanents you control. You can pay Wooburg, that would be white, blue, black, red, and green, to search your library for a legendary permanent card with a converted mana cost less than Sisay's power, and then put that card into the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. So the idea here is that once you get it out onto field, you can once you get the mana, you can go ahead and just tutor up any legendary in this deck. So there are a lot of legendary things in here, between mana rocks and artifacts. There's legendary enchantments, all kinds of cool things. So why don't we just get into it and take a look at what we got. First, let's go ahead and hit the SuperFriends. Again, primary planeswalkers in this deck. The strategy with the planeswalkers is to just get the counters on them. So we're going to see what we've got cooked up here. So Teferi, Time Reveler, each opponent can cast spells only anytime they could cast a sorcery. So this keeps your planeswalkers from being countered. So when he comes out, they're not going to be able to mess with anything on your field while it's your turn. Until your next turn, you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. There's not really a lot of sorceries except for, I'm going to say board wipes in here. But there are definitely a reason why you want to use a board wipe. You'll see. Return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand, and you draw a card. So if you need to, you can punt something off the field if you need it with him. Next we got is this one, Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge. Creature and planeswalker spells you have affinity for artifacts. Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of artifacts you control. You gain X life. As -3 would be return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. If you can get him into his ultimate, exile the top 10 cards of your library. Put all artifact cards from among them onto the battlefield. So really super good. I think the biggest thing I wanted to do is give my I think it's called, is it called Affinity for Artifacts? Yeah, it's kind of like Convoke or similar. So the more artifacts you have out, the cheaper it'll be to pay the mana costs on some of these planeswalkers. Next we got is going to be Teferi, Master of Time. You may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi, Master of Time, on any player's turn. Anytime you could cast an instant. You can do his +1 if you want. Draw a card, then discard a card. Target creature you control phases you don't control phases out. And then you can take 2 extra turns after this one if you can get him up to his ultimate. He starts at 3, so hopefully you have some doubling season or some things out right now to double his counter. So next card we've got is going to be Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh. It was +2 is target opponent exiles cards from the top of his or her library until he or she exiles a non-land card. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Now, each opponent, for his +1, exiles 2 cards from their hands. So he just starts punting cards out of people's hands. So it's really a really powerhouse planeswalker. Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh, deals 7 damage to target opponent or creature an opponent controls. And then last, his ultimate would be exile each non-land permanent your opponents control Oh boy, like pretty much everything it's a just giant, it's a board wipe. It just wipes out everything. I think his +2 and +1 are really, really super strong. So great card to have in a deck like this. Next, we're going to have Tamiyo, the Moon Sage. You can +1 to tap target permanent. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. You can -2 her to draw a card for each tapped creature a target player controls. So if it turns out someone's got all their creatures tapped for an attack or something they were doing, well, then you can use her to go ahead and, get some card draw. And if you get her up to her ultimate, again, your goal is to get all these planeswalkers up to their ultimate as quickly as possible. You get an emblem with, you have no maximum hand size, and whenever a card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you may return it to your hand. So you won't really have to worry about losing access to these guys. Now, Lord Windrace is in here to restore some lands back. So basically, you can play as one, you can discard a card, then draw a card. If a land card is discarded this way, draw an additional card. So the idea, the -3 says return up to 2 target land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you use a fetch land, for example, and the fetch land's in the graveyard, you put that into the battlefield, and then you can go ahead and immediately tap it to go get a land. You follow where I'm going with this? So his -3 is used to go ahead and obtain fetch lands. Now, I've only got about, I think, 3 or 4 fetch lands in here. It's as much as I could come up with for now, but the ideal and most expensive version of this deck, you'd have 10 fetch lands, and then a guy like this would allow you to just keep getting more stuff out of your deck and clearing it out from lands. You can destroy up to 6 target non-land permanents. They then create 6 2/2 green cat warrior creature tokens with Forest Walk. So he's more just for bringing the lands back into play and so on. Some other factors too. Liliana, Death Horde General. Whenever a creature controlled dies, you can draw a card. You can use use her +1 to create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. It's good to have a little chump blocker to kind of protect these planeswalkers while they're kind of weak, when they're only 1 or 2 planeswalkers out. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures for her -4. And then her -9, her ultimate. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. It's pretty epic. Next we got is Jace, Unraveler of Secrets. You play the one, scry 1, and then draw a card. Return target creature to its owner's hand for -2. And of course, his ultimate emblem is going to be whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, counter that spell. So again, if you want to try to get them up to their ultimate. Liliana, Waker of the Dead. Each player discards a card. Each opponent who can't loses 3 life. Target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. You get an emblem at the beginning of combat on your turn. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. So definitely you want to be comboing these planeswalkers and getting them to do some different effects all at once. Now, this one's a +2. Create a 2/2 black pirate creature token with menaces. Again, a little chump blocker to protect some planeswalkers. You destroy target artifact for -3. Creature or enchantment. Then create a treasure token artifact token with, of course, tap it. You can add 1 mana of any color you mana pool. So it does have some mana ramp built onto the card. And if you can get her up to her ultimate, which again, there's a lot of ways to do that very quickly. -10, target player's life total becomes 1. 1. So I'm going to have 40 life, -10, down to 1. Unless they get rid of the planeswalker. Next we got is Narset Transcendent. You look at the top card of your library. If it is a non-creature, non-land card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand for its +1. Very good for some card draw. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell from your hand this turn, it gains rebound. And the -9 emblem, your opponents can't cast non-creature spells. So again, you always want to keep going after the ultimates on some of these. And of course, some of their miscellaneous plus abilities can definitely also be very helpful too. This is Kaya, the Inexorable. Her +1 is to put a ghost form counter on up to 1 target non-token creature. It gains, when this creature dies or is put into exile, return it to its owner's hand, and create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Of course, the -3 is exile target non-land permanent. And -7, which it's only 2 away from that, you get an emblem. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a legendary spell from your hand, from your graveyard, or from among cards you own in exile without paying their mana costs. Super, super good. So if you have something that gets exiled, by all means, you can do that. Return up to 1 target land card from your graveyard to your hand. Again, if you're using a fetch land or something similar, ideally you're going to want to use Wrenn and 6 to go retrieve that fetch land and put it back into play. It's only 2 mana, so it was a pretty cheap little ad. I mean, the 1 damage to 1 target's like, well, whatever, who cares? And any of the sorceries in your graveyard, if you have like board wipes in there that you need to have access to, this will of course allow you to go and restore those. Really super useful. Next we got is going to be Teferi, who slows the sunset. Choose up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target creature, and up to 1 target land. Untap the chosen permanents you control. Tap the chosen permanents you don't control. And of course you can gain 2 life. The -2 would be look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. You get an emblem with untap all permanents you control during each opponent's untap step, and you draw a card during each opponent's draw step. So super, super good thing to try to get him up to his ultimate as quickly as possible. Next we got is Garruk, Apex Predator. His +1 is to destroy another target planeswalker, so he's anti-opponent's planeswalkers. +1, put a 3/3 black beast creature token with Death Touch into the battlefield. -3 is to destroy a target creature. You gain life equal to its toughness. And of course, his -8, he's only 3 away from that. Target opponent gets an emblem with, whenever a creature attacks you, it gains +5/+5 and gains trample until end of turn. I think the big thing here is the onboard destruction that he has. I think that's a good little add-on there that helps clear the field for you. Next one we got is Ajani, Strength of the Pride. Its +1 is you gain life equal to the number of creatures you control plus the number of planeswalkers you control. So good little +1 to have. The -2 is to create a 2/2 white cat soldier creature token with named Ajani's Pridemate with whenever you gain life, you can put a +1/+1 counter on Ajani's Pridemate. Now his 0, which is really cool, if you have at least 15 life more than your starting life total, you can exile him, and each artifact and creature okay, so you exile Ajani, Strength of the Pride, and each artifact and creature your opponents control. So basically, you exile him, and then all their stuff just goes into exile at the same time. So it just takes them into a portal and pulls them all away. The next one we got is Teferi, Temporal Archmage. You can look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand and the other at the bottom of your library. His -1 is to untap up to 4 target permanents. You can do that to your lands for ramp. Super great card. Or you can do that to an artifact or a mana rock, whatever you need. You want to use that for untapping. Now, if you can get him up to his 10 and do his ultimate, you get an emblem with, you may activate loyalty abilities with planeswalkers you control in any player's turn. At any time, you could cast an instant. So it allows you to just activate their loyalty abilities on flash. So you can just, turbo mode all your planeswalkers at once. Ralzarek, the primary reason I have him in here, you can tap a permanent, then of course untap another one. So you can use him to untap, let's say, a land or maybe a mana rock or something, or something else. You never know. His -2, he deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Not that impressive. Now his -7 is where it's going to shine. So if you can get him to get off on -7, to go off on his maximum ability, his ultimate, allows you to take an extra turn for each coin that comes up heads. So you flip 5 coins, however many come up heads, you're going to get to take an extra turn. I've seen players honestly get 5 heads, so they're just taking 5 extra turns and then they win the game. So he has an onboard win condition if you can. It's a little bit luck based, but if you do get that, there's a high probability you can win. Next Planeswalker is going to be Tezzeret, Artifice Master. His +1 is to create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Again, you want these little chump blockers to be in the way of damage coming in from creatures. His 0 is to draw a card. If you control 3 or more artifacts, you draw 2 cards instead. So a 0 card draw is just absolutely awesome on this guy. You get an emblem, of course, at the beginning of your end step. Search your library for a permanent card and put it into the battlefield. And then shuffle your library. So it allows you to go get stuff. And get, like, if you don't have it out already, well, go get Doubling Season, which you'll see is in the deck. Next Planeswalker is going to be Tamiyo, Field Researcher. You choose up to 2 target creatures until your next turn. Whenever either of those creatures deals combat damage, you draw a card. You tap up to 2 target non-land permanents. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. And then, of course, if you get to -7, draw 3 cards. You get an emblem with, you may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana cost. So just free spells. Free spells. It's popping out. Next Planeswalker we got is going to be Ajani Unyielding. Reveal the top 3 cards of your library. Put all non-land permanent cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. And then, of course, his negative, put 5 +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and 5 loyalty counters on each Planeswalker you control. So if you can get him to go ultimate, it's going to make all the other Planeswalkers ultimate at the same time. So the idea behind this is to get this to -9 so you can just go ahead and ultimate all your Planeswalkers at once and win the game. The last Planeswalker we have is Nicol Bolas. His +3 is to destroy target non-creature permanent. So his +3 is to blow stuff up, which is absolutely phenomenal. Start blowing up, soul rings and mana sources and anything that's going to be an issue as far as artifacts go. You can gain control for -2 of a creature. His -2 is to gain control of something, which is amazing. You just take it from somebody else, take someone's commander, whatever you want to do. If you get him to -9, he deals 7 damage to target player. That player discards 7 cards and then sacrifices 7 permanents. So I think the big thing here is the fact that you can gain control of stuff and that you can destroy permanents on the field. So that's all our Planeswalkers. We're going to jump into the support. You definitely got to have some support in this deck to keep these Planeswalkers on field, because once someone figures out you're playing SuperFriends, it's... people are going to eventually start, wanting to attack you. You might become the biggest threat at the table, and it might turn into a game of arch enemy, It depends on your play group. Deep Glow Escape, it's pretty much a guaranteed. You have to have this card in this deck. When it enters the battlefield, you double the number of each kind of counter on any number of target permanents. So if your Planeswalker is 5, he's now a 10. So once you get this fish out, boom, you double all your Planeswalker's counters, and you should be able to ultimate all your Planeswalkers when this comes into play. Next we got is Djeru with Eyes Open. It's got Vigilance. When With Eyes Open enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a Planeswalker card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. If a source would deal a damage to a Planeswalker you control, prevent 1 of that damage. So it has onboard tutoring for Planeswalker, once you play this thing. So it's really super helpful. Next, we got some mana boost here. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. So this gives you that 5 colors of mana that you need. You have to have a source or the ability to always be able to make all 5 colors. So that's going to help. Next we got is Captain Sisay. This card is just broken. I mean, all I'm going to say is you search your library for a legendary card, reveal the card, and put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. Not much explanation needed. Planeswalkers are legendary. Any of the other legendary things that are in here, you can just go get it. And it's just a tap ability. I mean, it's just so good. It has to be in here because we're going to need to use it. We got Bloom Tender. For each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color to your mana pool. Super useful. This one, Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider. It has Trample and Haste. When you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, you put twice that many of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead. So again, your planeswalkers, you're going to double your planeswalkers counters. Every time you add counters, it's going to be double the amount of counters you're adding. So super useful. If an opponent would put one or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half that many of each of those kind of counters on that permanent or player instead, rounded down. So super useful. Next we got is Favor Elder. That's Vigilance. It gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control. And then, of course, for each color among permanents you control, you add 1 mana of that color. So you can tap this, and add 3 mana or 4 mana of the specific color you're looking for. For each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. Super good card. Next we got is going to be Mila, Crafty Companion. I put her in here because whenever an opponent attacks one or more of your planeswalkers you control, you put a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. Whenever a permanent you control becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. So again, it gives you some card draw and a little bit of protection on your planeswalkers, or at least a way to buff them up a little faster if somebody's trying to attack your planeswalkers. Next we got Evolution Sage. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you proliferate. So whenever you landfall, you're going to add counters to your planeswalkers. Definitely very useful to have. Those lands are going to come into play. Next one is going to be Prismatic Bridge. It is legendary enchantment, so Sisay can go get it. The other Sisay obviously can go get this. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature or a planeswalker. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, you have 2 Sisays in here, so one of them, I believe, can just put this into the battlefield. So let's take a look at our commander again. So there's our commander. Yep, this is going to put it in the battlefield. So if you just want to get it right on field and just have that 5 mana, you can just basically get it right out anyway, like you were just casting it. So you don't have to send it to your hand or pull it or whatever. You can just go ahead and fetch it and put it out. But again, you reveal cards on top of your library until you reveal a creature or planeswalker card. And you put that card into the battlefield and the rest in the bottom of the library. So it's another way to get stuff out into the battlefield. Ramp stuff out there. Next we got is Arena Rector. When he dies, you exile it. If you do, you search your library for a planeswalker card and put it into the battlefield. And then, of course, shuffle your library. Next one is going to be, this one's really just kind of like a mana rock, but it does give you some color. It's an artifact creature, and it gives you that 5 colors you need. So it's only 2, so it's fundamentally almost like a Birds of Paradise, but just on an artifact, so kind of cool. Next one's going to be Consecrated Sphinx. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw up to 2 cards. So it adds additional card draw to the deck, and it is also a creature. So kind of helpful. Next we got is going to be Atraxa. So I removed her for commander status and just put her into the 99. She's got Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink. And at the beginning of your end step, you can proliferate. So if there's counters on your planeswalkers, well, then you add another counter. So again, you want to try to speed them all the way up to their ultimate ability if you can. If you want to keep the planeswalker on field and not let it die, then of course you want to go a little bit past the ultimate. So if you want to try to keep it out. Now we got Oath of Liliana. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. At the beginning of each end step, if a planeswalker enters the battlefield under your control this turn, you can put a 2/2 black zombie creature token on the battlefield. Again, it's nice to have a little chump blocker, to try to protect your planeswalkers, so you need the help. Smothering Tides, it's going to go ahead and give you, obviously, treasure tokens, so you can generate that mana. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If that player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token. Super useful. Next we got is Oath of Teferi. When it enters the battlefield, exile another target permanent you control. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. You may activate the loyalty abilities of planeswalkers you control twice each turn rather than only once. So again, that's going to turbocharge your planeswalkers. But I want you to think about something about this card. When it enters the battlefield, you could take the fish, bring it out of the battlefield. You know, I'm talking about the fish, right? It doubles your Planeswalker's counters. You want to get that card and then just put it back in. So if you get Oath of Teferi out and you have the a little fish there that doubles their counters, well, then you remove the fish back in, and then you put it back at the next end step. So you're going to get the effect twice. So it's a good way to bounce that and get your effect twice. And then, of course, you may activate loyalty abilities twice each turn. So that's just broken. You just are punting things off the field with some of those negative or plus abilities. So super useful. Next we're going to have is Oath of Nissa. When Oath of Nissa enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature, land, or planeswalker card from among them and put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast planeswalker spells. So for 1 mana, this is so super useful in a deck like this to be able to Super Friends all your stuff. Rhystic Study. I think you guys know what Rhystic Study does. This is going to be a lifesaver. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control. Very important. Unless they play X for each of the creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. So again, this definitely gives you some good protection on your planeswalkers and you from a lot of ground pounders overwhelming you and your planeswalkers. So very helpful. You got to have this. It's pretty much a must for a deck like this. It's doubling season. It just doubles all your counters. So if an effect would create 1 or more tokens on your control, it creates twice as many. If an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent, it puts twice that many. So any +2s become a +4, a +1 becomes a +2, whatever. You can kind of follow where I'm going with that. Super good. Next we got is going to be Whirlwind of Thought. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, which a lot of this stuff is, there's a few creatures in here, but a lot of this other stuff is not. So you can draw a card every time you're casting something. Definitely really important to have a lot of card draw here. Next we got is another 5 Wooburg card. The first spell you play each turn has Cascade. If you're new to Magic, you're not familiar with the mechanic Cascade, it tells you on the card. So when you play your first spell, remove cards from the top of your library from the game until you remove a non-land card that costs less. You may play it without paying its mana cost, and then put the remove cards in the bottom of your library. So it allows you to put out an extra thing. So it's so super helpful. It's kind of a way to speed out a bunch of stuff from the top of your deck. Inexorable Tide. Whenever you cast a spell, proliferates. So any spells you're casting are putting counters onto your planeswalkers. So super helpful. Next we got is Oath of Gideon. When he comes in, you put 2 1/1 core ally creatures. However, his second ability is what shines. Each planeswalker you control enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter on it. So it's already getting buffed as soon as it comes in. So super useful. Now, we're going to get into the rest. You can kind of see how the build is here. You're going to need to run a lot of this kind of stuff to really keep you alive and keep things from attacking you. So you are going to run board wipes. Wrath of God destroys all creatures. This is not a board wipe, but you can see why I have it in. This sorcery draws 2 cards, and then I proliferate, so I add a counter to those planeswalkers. Super useful. Day of Judgment, it's a board wipe, destroys all creatures. Kaya's Wrath, destroy all creatures. You gain life equal to the number of creatures controlled that were destroyed this way, so it gives you destruction and some a little bit of life gain there. Time Wipe. Return a creature you control to its owner's hand, then destroy all creatures. Again, you can kind of see where this is going. You're trying to make sure there's no creatures out on the battlefield to take out your planeswalkers. And of course, you put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's libraries. And if you want, if you pull it and you see that it's advantageous for you to use the miracle ability, then go ahead and pop that miracle for 1. So remember, with miracle, you draw it from the top of your library, and if it's a miracle, you have to state at that point they're going to cast it for its miracle, okay? So it has to be done at that time. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a couple of good little artifacts. Rings of Bright Hearth. Whenever you activate an ability, which a planeswalker's ability is an activation, if it isn't a mana ability, you may pay 2. If you do, you can copy the ability. You may choose new targets for the copy, so you can duplicate what your Planeswalker is doing if you do that kind of thing. So very, very super useful for a deck like this. Next we've got is the Chain Veil. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate a loyalty ability of a Planeswalker this turn, you lose 2 life. Okay, whatever. You're playing Super Friends, so if you got a Planeswalker, you're probably activating their ability. For 4, for each Planeswalker you control, you may activate one of its loyalty abilities once this turn, as though none of its loyalty abilities had been activated. You're double activating your loyalty abilities, so super good. Now, we need to get some rocks. Again, it's 5 colors, so the biggest thing here is you have to get to that 5 color so that you can use your commander, or if your commander gets, sent to the command zone too many times, you're going to have to hard cast some of this stuff. So first up, we got a Lotus Petal. I think you know what it does. You sack it and get a mana of any color. Chromatic Lantern. Of course, it gives you any color mana. This is, of course... Thrawn Dynamo gives you 3 of just colorless, but it does give you some extra ramp there. Gilded Lotus, for 5 you get 3 mana of any one color, so very useful. Next we got is Felwar Stone. You tap it to add a mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. Then we got Mox Amber. Add 1 mana of any color among legendary creatures and planeswalkers you control. It's 0. It costs 0, so it's fundamentally identical to a land, so really super good there. Next we got is Arcane Signet. For 2, you tap it, add a mana of your commander's color identity, so it's a 5-color deck. You're going to get a 5-color commander, or 5 colors of mana available to you there. Next we got Commander Sphere, same thing. Add a color of your commander's color identity, and of course you can sack it to go ahead and draw a card. Here's an important ad. It is a legendary artifact. So remember, some of those cards can go tutor this. You can spend mana as though it were mana of any color. Obviously costs 7, but when you do get it out, you can tap it to add 5 colorless mana. You can pay 5 to draw a card for each color among permanents you control. So if you have all 5 colors of mana out, you could pay the 5 and then draw up 5 cards in your hand. So I thought Chromatic Orrery is probably one of the best or really appropriate ads for this, and of course the Soul Ring. Now we're gonna check out the non-basics. There are a lot of non-basics in here. Now the ideal way to build this deck, if you can afford it, is to try to do, if possible, 10 fetch lands or even 11. I think Prismatic Vista counts as a fetch land, so you see where I'm going with this. If you can afford it, go for maybe 11 fetch lands. That'll get those lands pulled out of your deck, so you're just pulling up planeswalkers and spells and stuff. So super good. First one we're going to look at is Horizon Canopy. This is the OG version from back in Future Sight. Good little card to have. Of course, you can see it has a built-in card draw sacrifice on it, and of course you pay the life and you get the mana. So really cool to have that on there. Next up is going to be Gemstone Mine. Again, it's going to allow you to get access to some mana real quick, that in case you don't have the right colors, you can use this and get some. City of Brass. Any color mana, but it deals 1 damage to you. Now here's a fun one. The World Tree. Now read what it does. So as long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. So that'll get a lot of cool things to happen. But also, too, if you do get up to 10 mana, 10 of all those colors, you can sacrifice the tree and then search your library for any number of god cards, put them in the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. There's not really any gods in here, but the fact that it does give you, once you have the threshold of the 6 lands, the fact that all of them can tap for any color, I thought that was a good little ad. Super, super, super helpful. Next, we're going to look at Stomping Ground. It's just a shock land. I think you know what it does. Red and green. Take 2 damage if you let it come in untapped. Temple of the False God. Misty Rainforest is going to allow you to go get either a forest or a forest or an island. What I was trying to think of to say that you can also get like triomes and things that say forest, mountain, island or something on it. So as long as the word island or forest is on it, you can go fetch it. Cardin's Bastion. It has for 4, you can proliferate. So if you have some just mana laying around and nothing to do with it, if you have planeswalkers out, you can add a counter to them with this land. So Super helpful. Sea of Clouds. It's untapped, of course, in Commander because you're playing multiple opponents. Polluted Delta is a fetch land. You go tap it, go get it. Obviously an island and a swamp. Super easy. Overgrown Tomb. It's another shock land. You take the 2 damage when it comes out if you want it to be untapped. Bloodstained Mire, another fetch land. You pay the life, you get a mountain or a swamp. We got Zagoth Triome. When it enters the battlefield, it does enter the battlefield tapped, but when you untap it, of course, you'll be able to get both swamp, forest, and island. So black, green, and blue. Next one, land, is going to be Lotus Veil. You have to sacrifice 2 lands, but it does on a land do the same as like the Mana Rock. Let me show you. It's basically the same as a Gilded Lotus, but it's on a land. So if you take a look at it, see, very useful. You're only tapping 2 lands for it, so it's cheaper than a Gilded Lotus. You're basically paying 2 for it, but you get that ability every turn. Super useful. Grand Coliseum. You add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Grand Coliseum deals 1 damage to you. So again, 5 colors. In Dantha Triome, it gives you the white, black, green. Opal Palace gives you any color that's in your commander's identity. And of course, adding a counter to Sisay will give her more of that ability to, if you read the card, it's equal to her converted mana cost is less than Sisay's power. So you can get some bigger stuff out if she's got more counters on her. So, using Opal Palace to drop a counter on Sisay is super useful. Of course, we have Rupture Spire. You can see what it does. Okay, add a mana of any color. We got this one, Gateway Plaza. Again, add a mana of any color. Reflecting Pool, of course, allows you to add color of mana equal to any of the other lands that you have that can produce it. So, Interplanar Beacon, add 2 mana of different colors. Spend this mana only to cast Planeswalkers. So, again, Planeswalker affinity on a card is really helpful. Exotic Orchard, any color. Raugrin Triome is blue, red, white. Forge of Heroes. Again, you want to make sure to put that counter on Sisay to get her up higher, to get more free stuff. Cascading Cataracts is basically a filter. So whatever color you need, use your Cataracts to get that filter to what you need to be. I'm not going to tell you what a command tower does or a reliquary tower, any hand size. Fiery Islet, you can tap it to draw cards, very similar to Horizon Canopy, so same idea. Bountiful Promenade, of course, it comes in untapped because you're playing multiple opponents. Katraya Triome comes into play tapped, but again, you get the green, blue, red on that one. Fable Passage, insert your library for basic land card, you put it in the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Then if you control 4 or more lands, you can tap the land. So definitely a good card to have to go ahead and fetch some stuff for you. And last, we got Vault of Champions. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you, again, it's another commander land, so you play it, it's untapped because you're playing multiple opponents. Guys, that wraps it up. I did the best I could to speed through this, but it took me a while to make this deck. It's such a process of like, what do I keep? What do I take out? Having enough multicolor sources to get you the mana you need. The biggest thing with this deck, and again, here's our commander, Sisay, Weatherlight Captain. Biggest thing is you want to get those counters on her. Use this for tutoring up and putting into play what you want to play. So you can kind of start comboing up some Planeswalkers. Try to think about what combos you want to do that'll synergize really well as a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing. And try to always protect Sisay if you can. See what you can do to protect her. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to go ahead and give you the 2 biggest hate bears against this deck. Now, what I'm going to suggest to you is that in your play group, there's always a rule 0. You need to ask your players, are you playing back to basics? You can't run this game at all on back to basics. Or this deck, excuse me. So if somebody has back to basics, you just, maybe ask a player to play a different deck, or maybe you play a different deck or something, but it's going to not function if somebody plays back to basics. The other card is this Hate Bear. If somebody has this and they're running it, just say, listen. If this comes into play, you might as well just scoop because you just can't do anything in your deck. You might find a way to beat them down with the creatures, but the deck is hugely nerfed if you go ahead and let this resolve. So just saying that out there. I use this card in a lot of decks to avoid, for this kind of a deck. But you can kind of see where this is going. So these are the two Hate Bears you have to avoid, and your turn 0, rule 0, excuse me, you want to make sure to talk with your play group about what kind of decks you all are playing and see where that goes. Because this is a very fair deck. It does everything. You're just using the synergy of your cards. This is just a giant lockdown and bummer if somebody plays this. So, in any event, I thank you guys for watching my videos. Please like and subscribe. And by all means, I'll be making more deck construction videos. Also, join my Patreon. I'm going to go ahead and put some deck lists of all these decks on my Patreon for the minimum tier. If you want to have access to the Magic the Gathering store I have, that'll be the next tier up. So, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.